long day, I got a lot to say. It feels like I'm carrying a 2-ton weight. I go to see a friend.
Hello, I'm Msgr Patrick Winslow.
And I am Father Matthew Kauth.
And we are speaking from the rooftop.
A podcast brought to you by 10 Books, in which we invite you to join our conversation out here in the open air,
where we look out upon the world around us from the rooftop of the church and share with you what we see.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen till I know.
Hello there.
Hello.
Oh, so good to talk with you.
And to you.
Well, thank you. So I have a question for you. What do you think about aliens? Did we discuss this already?
I don't think we have.
It's a topic that comes up every now and then in my head. So I never know if I actually have spoken to you about it. You know what gives me peace about the whole idea?
What's that?
Is C.S. Lewis.
The Space Trilogy?
Yeah, that he contemplated the idea of there being other intelligent life without it in any way, shape, or form hindering or impugning his Christian faith.
Right.
Because I think that that's what spooks a lot of people out. It spooks people, the idea that if that were to be the case, what is my faith impugned in some way? Is my faith somehow negated because this might be a reality?
Right. There was a very funny cartoon in which there is a minister, and the minister is wearing a collar, and I won't say which cartoon it was, but he's preaching to the people at one point, and the spaceship shows up. He takes his collar, he throws it on the ground, and steps on it and says, "I worship you, take me with you." to that point, right?
Yeah.
That it somehow repudiates his entirety of belief, and therefore he's little more than a charlatan anyway.
Right.
And the moment he sees evidence of some other intelligent life that he can give himself to, so he does. Yeah, and Lewis's point was that there are other intelligent, rational creatures that have different sort of shapes, sizes, bodies, etc. Because we're not the only kinds of bodies that could have rationality. I mean, obviously, God can make bodies to be the very matter that can be informed by a soul in different ways, as he does even in the micro differences we find in humans in general, right? We're of all different sizes and shapes. But his thing was that once Christ had taken on the human form, he would not have any other worlds that would not have the human form, since God the Son now has a human nature, which is a nice way of dealing with it. Quite beautiful and fitting, I think. But as far as whether I think that there are aliens, I don't. I have no reason to say that other than the fact that I think that any inhabitable planets are so insanely far away that the consideration of organic life getting to us from another galaxy, quote unquote, far, far away, the seeming impossibility of any kind of genuine light travel, which itself would still be too far, it ceases to be an interesting point to me. So if there are, and certainly could we ever have any contact with them? Doesn't seem like it. So I guess I don't think about it very often.
Well, it's the people who have experiences whose otherwise seem very credible. And then
are you seeing aliens?
We're not going to get into that right now. I think I'm looking at one right now, to be quite honest. And this may be a stage intervention here.
Mirror in front of him.
No, Father Kauth is not human. I mean, there are a number of things that have come out in recent years, especially with government releases of information. Some things that we're looking at. People have seen with their own eyes, pilots, and then they're tracking with their instrumentation, and what they're seeing is corresponding to what they're tracking. So it's not some instrument anomaly. It's doing things that we don't know how could be done. relative to the laws of physics is we understand them. And that's kind of one of your points, is that if folks or these beings or creatures would be so far away that there would be no real way to bridge that amount of space. Well, as we know it. Right? Because without getting too far into it, but one could conceive of other ways of moving beyond the mere traditional propulsion. Because space and time are malleable, which gives way to, Einstein's theory of general relativity and demonstrating gravity is a warping of space-time. And if it can be warped, if it can be bent and curved, then suddenly we're talking a little bit differently about how things can move. So something that is actually traveling straight through space is appearing to be in orbit because of a curvature to that space-time. So there are ways to begin to conceive of things beyond our normal conventional ways, which is always an interesting exercise, because 100 years from now, people will look back at us and see that we are in some sort of dark ages, or maybe 1,000 years, right? So it's challenging for the generation of a moment to think about the ways in which they will be perceived as being a little bit in the dark ages. So you have to admit that there are things about which we are currently in the dark that we will know and understand to a better and better degree in the future. So I understand there are parameters as we understand them currently that might argue against the idea. But I also understand that the way in which we understand the physical world, it evolves and develops, and that it might give way to other notions that admit for it.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of admitting, I admittedly don't have a clue about anything relative to the actual physics of the matter. Just things that I have read.
Sure.
But have not done the actual work myself, because I can't.
Oh, you can. You just don't want to.
I don't want to.
You're not inclined.
I don't find that stuff interesting.
Mm-hmm.
On some level, I do. Like, I like to read other people's work on it, but I don't want to do the work myself.
Summations, yeah.
Right. So, but your point, it's kind of what we're trying to do in general with even the name that we came up with a long time ago about being from the rooftop. Because what we're trying to do from a rooftop view is look at things that we don't readily see from a quotidian view, from the everyday immersion into our lives. So every one of us might begin the day terribly mindful and hopefully prayerful and conscious of the fact that they're existing. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? What's their purpose? All those sorts of things that hit you in the morning or in the evening before you go to bed. And then the day happens. You step into, the Heraclidian stream and you're just moving along. And part of from the rooftop is to stop and say, wait a minute, let me look at that.
Yeah.
And to look at it, I have to get some distance from it. So you do wonder if there were beings of a rational nature. I think I find any kinds of creatures of a non-rational nature to be a pretty easy sell.
From microorganisms to
pretty easy sell.
Yeah.
Rational ones,
it's a harder one.
It's a harder one.
Should we explain why?
Sure.
I mean, I think, my mind goes toward soteriology.
Okay.
Right? This idea. So it's the theological reflection and study of salvation. And God became what he saved. And I realized you could say that it became, a rational creature, but we've never said that.
Yeah,
we've always said he became a man, a human being.
Right, which is not just being a rational creature.
Right.
Or an intelligent creature for that matter.
He became a category of creatures. He became this creature.
Yeah, so the old adage that we have in theology is that what is not assumed is not saved. Right.
And so that makes me uncomfortable thinking of a class of creatures that might be rational, but excluded from the offer of salvation.
Well, we also don't know if they're fallen.
If they need salvation.
Right.
Right.
So Walker Percy has a great work called Lost in the Cosmos. Walker Percy was a Southern Catholic novelist and brilliant man. But his work, Lost in the Cosmos, he styles it the last self-help book. And in that book, it's a series of vignettes and topics. But one of the narratives he goes through is this group of people that kind of wake up from a cryo-freeze, the classic, you're out in space, you wake up, you're far away from home kind of thing. Earth's been destroyed in the meantime, so they have to land somewhere, and they contact a planet that's next to them. And the people on the planet say, we'll let you land, but are you clothed? And they said, well, of course we're clothed. And they said, well, you can't land here, I'm sorry. And the inference, of course, is that if they're clothed, they've fallen.
Right. The story of Adam and Eve.
Because they weren't fallen.
They recognize their nakedness as a sign of the fall.
That's the first question, is if there is rational life, have they been invited into the divine life? Because what else is a rational creature for? Right? The whole reason of being rational is to be kapax Dei, to be capable of God, to be able to be in a relationship, to know him and to love him, and vice versa. Otherwise, why is there rationality? I mean, rational life without the purpose of rational life is a kind of living hell.
And what you're talking about is teleology, the purpose for which something is.
Sure. So that's a big question. And if they are rational and not fallen, that'd be a pretty interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to talk to them.
Yeah, you'd have to stay on the phone, but even then, that won't necessarily work because you could still mess it up by way of words, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting that we think to ourselves always about aliens as being not just fallen, but A, super intelligent, and fallen, and B, wildly malevolent, right? They're always in our minds these sort of malicious creatures that are only coming to see us because they're going to rape our land and use Earth as a sort of a petroleum station.
It's a projection of our worst selves.
It kind of is, right? I mean, it's
Well, here's one of the reasons why I do think about it. And this is going to sound a little odd, but you should be used to that.
I am.
When I hear of abnormal or paranormal things, they don't get under my skin, because my Christian understanding of reality admits for all of those things and helps me slice and dice it. When I hear of alien things, I have a harder time. I don't want to say, and I don't think I can say, that my Christian faith precludes it, that it won't admit for it. I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's certainly unfamiliar territory, and therefore makes it uncomfortable. And because it makes it uncomfortable and unfamiliar to me, I can't let go of it. To a certain degree, I want to sort it. I don't want anything that lingers out there in the possible that could possibly be true, that in some way would impugn or threaten my faith. Mm-hmm. So I don't like that idea of me just turning a blind eye. So on the other hand, you don't want to become obsessed with something, which I'm certainly not. But I don't shy away from reading about some of it or hearing people's accounts. And I have to say, there's no small amount of people, no small number of people who've spoken with some credibility and sincerity about things that they've occurred, and some very famous people as well. And now coming out with some of the technology that we have everywhere, all the time, capturing things, there's more to be seen in videographic evidence and things, caught in misinterpretation. So that's some kind of, so for me, I guess the point of a conversation like this is to kind of carve out at least some space on how this might be admitted into a Christian worldview, or to be able to say definitively, which I don't think you and I can, to definitively that it doesn't fit. Right.
Well,
you and I, first of all, can't speak for the whole church on that point.
Sure.
But
I think, first of all, you want to take that tinfoil hat off? Why do you have that on?
No, I'm quite comfortable with it. I need to be available should someone call. From Vega, remember the movie from Vega? That was a fun movie, by the way. It was a little kind of quirky with the former priest thing or the former seminary. It was a little quirky, but it was Carl Sagan and somebody else
Yeah,
wrote that
I can't
book.
remember now.
But it was with Jodie Foster. But the whole premise of it getting a signal and kind of following through with it, it was a very interesting story of a movie.
Well, you talk about what we have now relative to surveillance and cameras and different ways of detecting, trail signatures and things of that nature. So what would be the purpose if there were aliens around, aliens are in our midst? What would be the purpose of hiding? So like if you're a Star Trek fan, they try to deal with this by saying it's the prime directive. One of the prime directives not to reveal yourself to... Not to interfere with a civilization that's growing on its own. Which I sort of understand, just the way we understand things relative to animals, right? That on some level, every time we interact with them, we're changing the course of the animal behavior. But fine, I'm also an animal. I'm a rational animal, but I'm an animal. And so why shouldn't I interact and change that course? What would be the purpose of, if they really are intelligent, of keeping from us a rather significant truth, right? That, hey, you're not alone in rationality, in intelligence. The other thing I think about relative to this topic is that St. Thomas says that it's kind of the church's tradition that there are more angels than there are other living creatures. And that doesn't mean just like at one time. That means like all time. Like there's that many angels.
But then you're saying all living creatures.
Yeah.
Not just human beings.
And so if that's the case, and I'm not sure why Thomas has any reason to believe that it is or any rationale for it, but he bases it on some text of scripture, et cetera. But like under the sand, the sands on the shore of the sea, the stars in the heavens, et cetera. If that were the case, and if it's true that every angel is his own species, right? Because they don't have any, what we call the principle of individuation, they don't have bodies. So who knows, in that long line of innumerable angels, what in the world they're all doing and how they're doing it.
Right.
So I do think that there is something to be said for the fact that we don't recognize the fact that we are surrounded by all kinds of different rational creatures all the time, like massively full universe full of intelligent creatures that we don't think about.
Well, in one of the ways, I think that most people don't have a lot of experience with angelology and the idea that each angel exhausts its own species. So, you can speak about every angel as being exhausting its own species. And, as such, you can say all of these many creatures.
Yeah.
That's
so
what you're talking
what are they all
about.
doing? I mean, are they the ones stirring up things that we're catching? Are good or bad, fallen or not fallen?
I mean, it's a possibility.
And if you were a rational creature, and let's just say you were exempted from the kingdom, if you can go into a pig, why can't you do something else?
Present as an alien?
I don't know. I mean,
present as a gray alien.
And maybe they're not even trying to present as an alien, but they just sort of, that's what they're doing.
The zip around the sky.
The zip around the sky. I don't know. I'm not even trying to make that case. I'm just saying that one of the reasons I think that we're so interested in aliens is because the universe is vast. And the consideration that there's nothing out there that we could communicate with seems haunting to us. I think it's dwarfing. It doesn't need to be because it's reflective of God himself and his immensity.
Well, see, I kind of go in a different direction. I think to myself, with his abundant goodness, why wouldn't he, with the same motives of creation for us, be inclined toward creation of others? Yeah,
and that's I'm totally agreeing with you on that.
Yeah, so it kind of seems like it seems to be more an example of having others.
I mean, clearly he didn't make everything that's possible to make. That's a reflection of him. because that wouldn't ever end. It'd be an
You'd be
infinite number of
infinite, yeah.
creatures. But I do think that one of the reasons we're looking for aliens is that sense of vastness, but also because we know that they exist.
Yeah.
Aliens, insofar as these intelligible substances known as angels, do exist.
Right. Hey, that's true. I mean, there's also no reason to believe that, within our universe, any of these other creatures would be. I mean, you could have a universe for a whole other set of creatures.
Yeah, and who knows what we don't know. I mean, I'm fascinated by certain things like in Egypt. I love the fact that the head of the Sphinx is just not proportionate to the rest. Why is that the case? These people who knew weight and measure better than any society ever did.
What are they saying?
Like, was that there before? Did they recarve it? Did they put something else on there? Was it there before they got there? What was it, if so? And there's all kinds of fun things in the Egyptian dynasties that manifest. We don't have a clue how they did any of these things. So what conclusion can you draw then? Well, it's another civilization or an alien or whatever, which I get. It's like if we now don't know how they did it and pride ourselves as being able to build anything.
Right.
Yeah.
It does open up a specter of possibilities, which I totally understand. I get. I would say to everybody listening, I am not uncomfortable the way I once was when I first started thinking about it, because I do think that there is some theological space to accommodate the idea.
Yeah.
I'm also not uncomfortable listening to people's experiences, because I tend to believe people, but I also understand that their experiences, in the sense, insofar as it's passing through their senses, and all sorts of things get translated. Like, it's amazing what your mind can do.
It is amazing.
Like, my mother would accuse my father of whole cloth fabricating memories. In his mind, the way something went down, and then she'll jump in and she'll say, "Are you crazy? That is not what happened." And my dad, he will swear up and down that his recollection of things, and every now and then my mother would be able to pull out some fact that will butt up against his perception of reality.
Well, your father's autobiography in his head is much more interesting than the biography that someone else writes.
He lives in a happy place.
He lives in a happy place.
In a very, very happy place. His world is a Hallmark movie.
Yeah. Speaking, this is not on topic. Maybe it's a topic for another time. But that about your father, about what we do in our minds, about other people, other beings, like, we're always seeing ourselves as the main protagonist, in our story, because how else do we do otherwise, right?
Right.
That for me, no offense, but you're a supporting actor.
Right. As are you.
And as am I for you, right? And if that were not the case, there'd be something wrong with us.
Right, then where am I living? Where's my center of gravity? Yeah.
And then there are people in our lives that are, I hate to say it this way, but they're like extras in a movie. Like, you see all those people that have names at the end of a movie that you never saw in the movie, but they were there. Right. They get their name in. And how much is shaped by your subjectivity about that objective world, because you're the protagonist of your story. And you're not even the main protagonist to some degree, right? I mean, God is. He set the scene, he set the stage, he created you, he gave you the role. Right. But nevertheless, you're an actor, and
not as posing as someone else. Yeah. But you yourself are the one who acts.
In the true sense of an acting, you are acting. You're an acting person. And I was listening to something, I think it was by Jordan Peterson. There's a topic that I've always been fascinated in, that sometimes you can have an impression of someone that is really appealing to you. Like, they're physically beautiful, their character is interesting, they're funny, they're witty, whatever. And then as you get to know them, you find them to be, they're not actually as beautiful as I thought they were. They're not as interesting as I thought they were, whatever. And you have the opposite too. When you come to love someone that was not striking to you in any way, shape, or form, but you're in a relationship because of life circumstances, whatever else you've thrown together, and you begin to love them, then all of a sudden your image of them genuinely changes. They're physically exactly the same person,
Right.
but you are seeing something different.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing things you didn't see before. And I think just to kind of bring this thing full circle is that the faith is what allows us to see. I have all the sort of empirical means by which to judge the world and to judge my life and to judge the things around me. But it's not much of my world. Like my world is so interior. I mean, our world as persons is so vast. What goes on inside of us and our intentionality, etc. And so I also have the faith to be able to judge that world. That it judges that one as well, that I can't get to with empirical scientific sort of data. And when we're talking about aliens, we're talking about a world that, as you say, does my theology account for it? On one level it does, it seems to me, as we've talked about. Another level it doesn't, because he just didn't tell us about it. So we're kind of left with this
it's speculation
because he didn't say anything about it. And a revealed religion only really talks about things that are revealed. So it's like, if you and I had the chance to talk to our Lord, 2,000 years ago, is it a question you would have brought up? I think I would have been afraid to bring it up, because he'd been like, what does it have to do with your salvation?
It's a great point. I especially like a lot of your reflection on the subjectivity, and I've had a lot of thoughts over years on this thought, on this idea that I perceive the world around me through the lens of my own perception, and that I'm a world unto myself, which is distinct from your world and every other person I walk by in an airport, and I'm an alien to their worlds. In many ways, you say, I'm either a supporting character, and oftentimes I'm just an extra. But for them, they are the protagonist. For them, they are the central character. And it is fascinating to consider that amount of subjectivity as a basis for people's reality. And yet it is simply that way. But I do think in some of the thoughts that you bring up, because that's a topic I think we should refer to, in other times in the future in these conversations. But I think that what you bring up begs the question, what are those things that God intends us to discover? And it seems to me that there are some things that are just meant to be discovered. So I don't know, is that too much of a discovery?
The South and the North Pole, I can't remember where I read this, on some ancient maps, they're there. And then more recent maps, they're not. Because we forgot that we knew about it. like someone went there at some point. Someone
not recent as in like today.
Some culture had some kind of contact with those lands, and it shows up on maps, and then it's gone.
And then it disappears.
Yeah, it's completely gone, to the point where, what was it? They thought they were going to, sort of fall off the edge of the world, kind of a thing, going around it. Not that, of course, no one thought the world was flat. That's a ridiculous thing, but that there was a confine to the world. And how do we forget about that? Like something we had discovered, and then we discover it again. There's so much that we're just discovering now about the depths of the ocean or whatever. How long? Our Lord is so incredibly patient. It's like, I've made this entire treasure house for you, and I'll just let you guys explore and figure it out.
And the exploration it's geographic. It's celestial. And then it's just into the very laws and the fabric of nature itself. And it's just an endless exploration. Into the science of life, into the science, the physical. As I was just kind of mentioning earlier about gravity and the pull. Yeah, we was in this conversation. Gravity and the curvature of space-time and things. It's when you start to reflect upon those things, your perception of reality is fundamentally altered. But it's more in accord. Right now we are spinning at enormous speeds, as the Earth spins, right? It's just the fact that it's a steady spin that we don't feel it because we are in the same inertial frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were to step outside and keep a sustained point of view, we'd be zipping by. And to begin to
What's
start...
the velocity of the rotation?
I forgot. I have forgotten. But it is extremely fast when you consider, at the surface of the Earth. Obviously, it's going to, at the surface of the Earth, it's just extremely fast.
Yeah.
And that's an enormous amount of distance going across in a given second as it spins to make a full revolution. Flying by. And for us, we're perfectly still.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of something like gravity, we have the perception that we're falling toward the Earth, when a more accurate description is that the Earth is thrusting upward. That we're the object at rest, and it's coming up at us, as opposed to the Earth at rest, and we coming down upon it. It's really quite the opposite. And in any event, that's an enormous amount of discovery. It's a discovery of the physical world around us. We have an enormous amount of discovery with respect to the biological science, enormous amount of discovery in terms of just geography, and then in the entire cosmos, the world around us. I mean, are we meant to occupy Mars? I mean, are we not meant to go beyond the confines of Earth?
Yeah.
These are just some interesting questions about
the nature
about
of,
what we're meant
the
to
nature
discover.
of man to want to explore.
I mean, at some point, the environment tells you you can't live here because it's not sustainable.
It's like the Northeast. It's not sustainable. Like New York, you can't live there. It's not sustainable.
Despite our efforts, it's an artificial climate. It's an artificial environment. You kind of need a natural environment that just says you belong.
And to think, once you have that massive piece of information about the purpose of the universe relative to God's revelation, that clearly, if you're talking about one who has made us and all things for us to get ourselves back to him and for his glory, then he meant for us to feel as if we're standing still. Right? It's not like we're perceiving it incorrectly. It's one of the things I try to teach the guys about scripture class. I mean, sometimes the debates about is scripture infallible in all of its parts? Well, yeah, the church teaches that. It's quite clear that everything in scripture is infallible. So what do you do with when you're talking about the vaults of heaven and the waters above the vaults? It's exactly how it looks.
Right.
I look up, it looks like I'm surrounded by water.
Right.
It's blue. Mm-hmm. In some sense, I am surrounded by water.
And water falls down from it.
Right? You open the vault, it comes down. So you're describing exactly what you're observing with your senses. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong about that, nothing untrue about that.
No, it's your point of reference.
Yeah.
And then in physics, you literally have to talk about your inertial frame of reference. I mean, you simply have to, because that's the way the whole thing works.
Now, part of your difficulty, though, I mean, I'm just going to say this publicly, is that you believe in all these laws of science. I know where they come from, which is the angels are running the show. And so what you call a law, I call
the work of the angels.
The work of the angels, right?
Of course.
So you think the earth is thrusting up at us. No, it's just angels are holding it. Right? Angels might be thrusting you down.
No, it's not that first of all, I would never deny the work of the angels. But I would say that you may be ascribing to them something that is only in your head. But the earth itself is not moving, but it's falling upward because of the curvature. So it's difficult to explain, but it's not like it's self-propelled.
And the reason it's difficult to explain is because it doesn't make any sense.
It does, actually. And here's
folks, I just like to mock him when it comes to science.
Here's the thing that makes you scratch your head is, well, it's a globe, right? So you're looking at a sphere and all the sides.
But it's not round.
Right, but let's just say you're looking at something that's somewhat round.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the surfaces moving outward. then why isn't the diameter increasing?
Mm-hmm. But it does bulge the diameter, right?
It's actually not. So if you conceive of the earth coming up to meet your feet as you stand,
Right.
then somebody on the opposite side of the globe, the earth coming up from their perspective to meet their feet would give the impression that the earth, the globe is increasing its diameter constantly.
Yeah.
And it's not. But there is a movement.
But doesn't the earth get a little bit pudgy around the waist? Right?
I guess it has a good side and a bad
I
side.
mean, I just remember reading some science book one year, and I was probably high school, that at the equator or something, it's actually a bit wider than other areas because that's where the rotation takes place. So I guess you call it centrifugal force, right? That's just pulling it out of at the spin points.
Yeah,
but,
you would have that.
Which again is nothing more than an angel.
The angel's
spinning the globe.
The centrifugal force angels,
and that's his job, right? And he's pretty content with that.
Oh, he's got a lot of it.
Well, because he's got the vision. So
I mean, everything that's spinning, he's being busy.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It's good theology.
I love your science.
It's good theology.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because it doesn't change because God doesn't change, so the angels are going to keep spinning. But they're also rational creatures, and so they might just
take a break.
They might take a break. They might stop it if Gideon needs to get through the war, and just say, we're going to halt this for a little bit.
Yeah, and then it throws everyone off.
Because they can.
Because the earth will stop spinning.
Yeah, it's fine.
You're a piece of work. All right, then.
Well,
before we go.
Do
you have any sort of Easter delights that you're thinking?
Yeah, I think I'm going to avoid talking about food.
All right, let's hear about it.
What I'm going to talk about is, maybe it's a bit too serious, but I don't want it to be. But I think that we've said this before, and it's always very difficult in some ways to live, more difficult to live Easter than Lent. Like, we don't like Lent because we give up things, right? We don't like Easter because the moment we get them back, we forget about God.
Right.
Typically, right? And so it doesn't seem to be as holy of a season.
Yeah.
It's like, one of the things I just want to reflect upon, and this is for another conversation, but in my own life as well, is that how do I live a season of actual celebration, a season of feasting in which I don't get distracted by the feast and forget the host, sort of thing. And that's kind of where I am with that.
I like that line of thinking. Because as you point out, there's usually less deliberation about celebrating Easter as a season than there is deliberation about celebrating Lent as a season.
And I do all that I do during Lent, or however poorly I do it, or how many corners I cut or whatever, but I do it for only one reason, which is not, to be my best self, or, to lose weight, or to simply grow in this virtue. I do it because I realize that for most of the year, I tend to drift away and find consolation in something other than Him. And so what this practice of Lent is supposed to do, obviously, is to find my consolation in Him, to be with Him more.
Yeah, to reorient.
And then I don't necessarily do that at Easter. Because everything comes back. Like, wow, this is great.
Then you're back to being disoriented. Right.
So I think we talked about it years ago, you and I. We were talking about that line from St. Paul, to set your sights on the higher things. We had a conversation about this one year.
Probably.
And it was just about trying to think about the highest things all the time. So maybe during Easter, we could actually have another recording, not blow the whole season before we do it.
Yeah, that's true.
And continue to talk
about the ways in which, that's a good idea. I like it. You see, as for me...
Food.
Well, it's food, but now you've inspired me to go beyond the food. My thought of Easter is it's about the atmosphere, the climate, the temperature outside, the sun, the light a little longer in the day.
Isn't it beautiful?
The temperate
it's the best time of
atmosphere. Yes. and the flowers popping
everywhere.
I realize it's different wherever you are. You live in a different part of the country, different part of the world. Obviously, what April is going to look like is going to be dependent upon where you're located. But for the East, we're kind of in the Southeast. It's really beautiful. And there's something quite amazing about that season of spring that resonates with Easter itself.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing your flowers blossom. I mean, there's a tree out in front of my house. I don't know what kind of tree it is, but it goes bald after all of its leaves fall during the autumn.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, this tree with these spindly arms everywhere. And then come the spring, you see these tiny pink buds all over these spindly arms. And in a matter of a week, those little tiny pink buds become small leaves. In a matter of several more weeks, they become big leaves the size of my hand.
Yeah.
And it is unbelievable how quick
so
this happens.
Fast, yeah.
But there's something about that atmosphere of life, that atmosphere of growth, that atmosphere of burgeoning and coming forward that is so resonant with the Easter season. It's just fantastic. And just taking it in, the smell, the air, the feel, the atmosphere. It is an absolute delight.
And
I mean, I remember like Washington, D.C. and the cherry blossoms.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I mean, that was always in sync with Easter.
There's no green like the green of spring.
Oh.
Like the leaves have such a freshness about them they don't have in the summer. When
Yes.
when the heat is bearing down on them. I was reflecting, that the name Florida, the whole state of Florida, is after a Latin word that has to do with blossoming. And it was named Florida because they discovered it on Palm Sunday. And Palm Sunday is the day that the antiphon for that is about the first flower of the resurrection happening at the Palm Sunday, because he's proclaimed a king when he comes in, and all the joy and everything else that attends upon that. But it's also the cause of his death, because you can't proclaim him a king and we have no king but Caesar. Right. But it's the first flowering of that, and to have a whole state named after that.
That's beautiful.
It's gorgeous, yeah. And so, as you say, to be fortunate enough to live in a place where the budding blossoms,
nature sings the hymn of Easter
at the same time as Easter. It's so fitting. So blessed to have it.
It's wonderful.
So one more pitch to say, if you live in New York, just come down
Stop
south.
talking to my father. All right.
Have a blessed week. God bless you all.
Bye now.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of From the Rooftop.
For updates about new episodes, special guests, and exclusive deals for From the Rooftop listeners, sign up at rooftoppodcast.com.
And remember, for more great ways to deepen your faith, check out all the spiritual resources available at tanbooks.com.
And we'll see you again next time.
From the Rooftop.